Hi everyone, and welcome to Learning Kitchen Live. I'm Beth and I'm one of the registered dietitians here at Community Servings. As always, we'd like to thank our friends at Boston Scientific for helping us to support this type of programming. And as always, we will be dropping the recipe in the comment section, and you can also link up to our YouTube page to find today's episode and all of our previous episodes as well. So today I had two sort of little parallel ideas going in mind. One of them was thinking about what to do with all the tomatoes. So I know I've talked to a lot of my friends who do some gardening, and everyone seems to have a lot of tomatoes either on their way in or already in if they were early planters. And it sort of gets to be this point in the season where you start to wonder, like, what can I do with all these tomatoes before they go bad? You know, we might get sick of making the same things over and over again or just putting them into salads. So one of the things that I like to do with tomatoes, and this also helps them sort of last and be able to be used a lot of different ways, is to roast them. So it's super easy. This is like almost a no recipe, but all I've done is taken about a pound of cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes. You could also do this with bigger tomatoes and just cut them up into smaller pieces. If they're particularly juicy, you might want to try to like squeeze a little bit of the juice out, but because you know the cherry tomatoes aren't particularly juicy. And so I've got my oven at 400 degrees. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drizzle. First, I'm going to put a few cloves of garlic. I'm not even going to chop them. They're peeled, but they're not chopped. I'm just going to sprinkle them into a baking dish. You can use like a 9x13 dish like you would cook lasagna in, or a small baking dish like that, or a sheet pan like this. And I'm just going to drizzle a couple of tablespoons of olive oil over them. And then you can use your hands or you can use tongs, whatever you like. And just kind of make sure that you get all of the tomatoes and all of the garlic cloves coated. And so what's going to happen when these go in the oven, they're going to kind of start to burst and they're going to be nice and jammy and get a little brownness on them. And then they can be used in a number of different ways, and I'm going to show you those today. And then finally, we're just going to season them a little bit with about a half a teaspoon of salt. So I'm just sprinkling it on. You don't have to be exact. You can always undersalt, and then if you feel like your final dish needs a little bit more seasoning, go ahead and do that. And so I'm just gonna make sure that all my tomatoes are coated with the salt. Let's turn this off. Okay, so I'm gonna pop these in a 400-degree oven. They're gonna go for about 20 minutes or so, maybe a little less. It depends on how broken down you want them to be, and I'll talk about the different ways that we're gonna use them in 3 different dishes. So I'm going to get these in the oven. So now I've actually already roasted off a set of these. So your finished tomatoes are going to look something like this. So they'll be nice and browned, they'll start to break down. Some of them may have exploded. It just depends on, how long you have them in the oven. So what I want to do now is just kind of squish them around with like a big spoon or even a fork, and just kind of get some of them squished a little, maybe break down the garlic if it's squishy. And you just want to be careful if your stuff is really hot. This has been out for a little while, so it's not quite as hot. So now once you have that, your possibilities are kind of limitless. And so what I like about this is that you can kind of do one big roast, like say you have a real hot day like today is here in Boston, and you know it's coming. You can do this ahead of time, and then you can throw it together with a bunch of different things to make a bunch of different dishes. So the dish I'm going to start with is a super quick, super easy pasta. So I have some spaghetti cooking in this pan. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to heat another pan, and I'm going to get my tomatoes going in there. You probably don't even need any extra oil because there's already like a pretty fair amount of oil on the tomatoes. So I'm just going to get them going in the pan. And you can see it's like a real nice little base of a sauce. Sometimes I like to add other vegetables to this too to really kind of bump up the veggie content. So you could saute some spinach in there too, or add some roasted zucchini if you have a lot of that in your garden, because I know when we get to the end of the summer, that tends to be an issue for people, is what else can I do with my zucchini? So once that starts to go, then all I'm gonna do is take some mostly fully cooked pasta. You wanna leave it just a tiny bit undercooked because we're gonna finish cooking it in this pan. So I have some spaghetti in here. And I don't even need to drain it because I want a little bit of the cooking water to come in with my dish to kind of bring it all together. So this is just like half of a box of just regular spaghetti, but you could use a whole wheat pasta to keep up the fiber. You could use a shorter pasta if you like. Whatever you like will work totally fine. So like I said, it's almost like a non-recipe recipe. And we're just gonna let that combine. If it feels like it looks a little dry, then you might want to add like a couple of tablespoons of the pasta water into it. And then all I'm going to do to finish it off is add some fresh herbs and a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And I've got this beautiful roasted summer tomato dish. So I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to add just a touch of Parmesan. And then I'm going to do a combination of basil and parsley, but whatever you have is great. You can also use dried herbs, like dried oregano would be great. I'm just going to run my knife through them. All right. So there we go. That's dish number one. And that took me like not even 10 minutes to do, not including, the time it took me to roast the tomatoes. But like I said, you could do it ahead of time. You do it in the morning before you leave for work. And when you get home, all you have to do is cook your pasta and throw it in. And I have this gorgeous restaurant-looking meal ready to go. Okay, so the second option is to do a similar type of dish, but instead of doing a pasta, I'm going to be doing it with beans. So sometimes people call this like a pizza baked beans, or just like a pizza beans with cheese on top. So I'm going to check on the tomatoes that I just put in to see if they're done. And then we're gonna put them back in the oven with with a can of white beans that I've just drained and rinsed. And then again, I'm gonna add herbs when it comes out. So it's a pretty similar dish, but in this case, it's gonna be higher in fiber. It's gonna have some extra protein, and it's gonna be more like a stew as opposed to like a pasta dish. Whoa. Yep, these look good. All right, so these are a little less roasted than the other ones, and like I said, it's pretty much up to you, like how long you want to let them go. So now all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull a few of these out so I can use them in another application, but I'm just going to add the white beans, give it a nice toss. You might want to add some additional seasoning, like some oregano or pepper, or even some hot spice, like crushed red pepper. And it's just going to go back in the oven for a few minutes. When it comes out, I'm going to add my herbs, maybe a little extra Parmesan cheese. And again, now I just have like a nice alternative to the pasta dinner that I just did with the exact same recipe. So we have two recipes now in one. Okay, and then finally, my last application that I'm going to show for this is an appetizer. So a lot of times people do a bruschetta with like a fresh tomatoes and mozzarella and basil, but I thought it would be really delicious to do it with the roasted tomatoes. So what I did is slice up a Italian bread and just drizzle a little bit of olive oil on it and toasted it in the oven for like 5 minutes or so until it looks nice and crunchy and toasty like this. So this is like a great option if someone invites you over last minute, come over, hang out in my backyard, and you're thinking, I don't have anything to bring. So if you have too many tomatoes, now you know what you can bring. So I'm just gonna spoon a few of the tomatoes on top. I probably don't have enough for the whole batch of these right now, but yeah, so I didn't save myself enough tomatoes, but that's okay. We'll just do a few of them. And then if you have the garlic cloves, you can just mash them up a little so that you're not giving people like a whole garlic clove. I don't know why these aren't matching. And then I'm gonna just take some basil and just lay it on top. You can chop it or you can leave it whole. Maybe a nice big leaf. And then you can do some extra seasoning. I'm actually gonna throw a little bit of balsamic vinegar as like a little drizzle on top of these. And then I have just a few little pieces of fresh mozzarella, so I'm just gonna put them on. And now you have this beautiful, summery appetizer, again, in less than 5 minutes. So there you go, super easy. So I'm just gonna pull the beans out so you can see what they look like, finish them off, and now we've created 3 dishes in the time it usually might take to make 1. Alrighty, so as you know, turbo ovens here always cook things a little faster. So my beans are a little dry, but that's okay. So now again, I'm gonna add some of my chopped herbs, some Parmesan cheese, and then it's ready to go. Alright, so sprinkle in the herbs. Sprinkle on the Parmesan cheese. And then just give it a really good toss, and it should be ready to serve. And this would be great with like a nice crusty bread or, even like a side salad. Again, you could also add some additional garden veggies. So if you have zucchinis, eggplant, anything that you want to roast up, you could just roast them probably either side by side with the tomatoes. I haven't tried doing it with it. The timing might not work out as well, but what I love about these recipes is that they don't really have to be perfect. They're more just sort of techniques. So once you know how to roast the tomatoes and keep them, then you can start messing around and playing with additional seasoning or, mess around with the different applications. So that gets that, and I'm just gonna put it in the bowl here so you can see it. And there we go. And this would make a really delicious make-ahead meal because you could eat this even cold or bring it to the office and just, add a few extra veggies or even throw in some, once it's cooled, throw in some salad greens and make like a really nice salad to bring to work. So I hope you enjoyed today. I hope if you have lots of extra tomatoes in your garden, instead of giving them away, you make up a big, huge bunch of roasted tomatoes and tell me all the ways you use them. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.